How are you all today? Terrific. The zealous, livable streets movement, why we battle to reclaim the urban commons from the car. Oh. Sounds like we might have a few bipeds in the audience today. New Yorkers? How many New Yorkers? Okay, terrific. I have two very compelling take actions for you. What's the urban commons? The urban commons, before the Creative Commons, before the digital commons, there were the common commons. The urban commons, the space between buildings, better known as the streets. So this is the only nightmare slide I have, all dream slides, all dream slides. Our movement is not about hydrogen power, it's not about biodiesel power, it's not even about electric, wind, or solar power. It's about human power. That is Jane Jacobs riding her bicycle not too far from here in 1963. When you're riding a bicycle in a great city, or you're walking in a great city, you're doing something you can't do any other way. You are experiencing what cities were built for in the first place. That is eye contact, facial recognition, interaction, transaction. You just don't get that from the wheel of a Humvee. But you can get it bicycling. Jane Jacobs. Here we are at the City Winery. This blue dotted line that cuts across Chinatown, Little Italy, this pocket of New York City we call Soho. This is the Lower Manhattan Expressway, 10 lanes of traffic, ladies and gentlemen, elevated expressway. Those of you who drove here today are probably saying, why didn't I take the Lower Manhattan Expressway? You didn't because it doesn't exist. It only exists in a parallel universe where Jane Jacobs doesn't. Jane is famous for stopping this disastrous highway project that would have turned New York City into Houston, Texas. And nothing against Houston, but it's a car apocalypse. But by the time Jane had stopped Robert Moses and the 20th century march of the automobile, most of the damage had already been done. This is what Park Avenue used to look like in the 20s, when it was actually a park. A few years later, after a golden invitation from the city to get behind the wheel of a car, this is what Park Avenue looked like. However, this summer, this is what Park Avenue looked like for 3 Saturdays in August. All right. God bless the Department of Transportation, the new DOT. They are doing extraordinary things with our streets, showing you how flexible and humane they can be. New York got the idea for summer streets from Bogota, Colombia. One of the really special things about the international and also very local livable streets movement is that we're borrowing ideas from each other like never before. So Bogota pedestrianized a whole swath of its downtown. They let the buses through. So no bunnies and rainbows in this photo, vision of the future, but decent transit service, a safe, attractive walking environment. Dare we say this is the future that we want? This is Seoul, South Korea. The before is on your right. This is downtown Seoul, big Lower Manhattan Expressway. They didn't have a Jane Jacobs to stop this project, but they did have the political will to tear it down a few years ago. And it's beautiful, it's working marvelously well. Fewer people are driving. The city is coming back. Cities, when you think about it, are all about density, right? The definition of a city is the buildings are close together. So by definition, the space between those buildings is very limited. What we're doing today, we're squandering the most valuable real estate in the world, giving this public asset to the lowest density mode of transportation. There are 50 people traveling in this photo. There are also 50 people traveling in this photo, and 50 in this one, and guess what? The buses are only half full. So when cities decide to make this modal shift towards more people-oriented transportation, there's a spatial dividend. What would you do with that space? What if it were your living room? You could put a garden in there. Other great things happen when we reduce the role of the car in the city. This is a mapping of human relationships on 3 different streets in the same neighborhood. One with light traffic, one with medium traffic, one with heavy traffic. If you live on a heavy traffic street, you don't know your neighbors, you have a lower quality of life. There's a great study we did here in New York. They did one in London recently showing the same thing. So lots of great benefits from giving the public realm back to the people. But this isn't why we fight. I mean, reason is great, but it's not a great motivator unless you're Mr. Spock. Most of us need something juicier, and we have that. Enjoy. When streets are safe and inviting and hospitable, people meet each other in ways you can't even predict. And as Julianne mentioned, every year we take over about 50 parking spaces here in New York just to show what is possible. You know, true story. General theory of relativity, thanks to bicycling. You know, Einstein has two great bike quotes. The other one is, life is like bicycling. To keep your balance, you have to keep moving. Einstein thought of that while riding a bike. We have our own Einstein here in New York City. Her name is Jeanette Sadik-Khan. She runs the Department of Transportation. I'm not sure if she thought, oh, some Jeanette fans here. All right, terrific. No, she's really emerging as a national and global leader on this stuff. That's her street design manual that she just released with her excellent team a few months ago. That is a blueprint for a 21st century city. Everything in there is borrowed from Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Bogota, livable streets that give the public realm back to people. So the first call to action I have for you is to check this out online. It's really great. Street Design Manual, DOT. See what's in there. It's a menu for your street, okay? Request this stuff at your local community board meeting. A really special thing happened last year or the year before, depending on whose stats you believe. But more human beings are now living in cities than not. We are now officially an urban species. By 2050, 2/3 of us will be living in cities. Here in New York, the streets comprise about 1/4 of the city's total land area, 80% of our open space. What happens in the space between buildings in the next 20 years is going to determine to a large degree how much carbon we emit, what our quality of life is, how often we talk to our neighbors and engage in civic discussion, how happy we are even. So the streets is where the action is, and Jane Jacobs, bless her heart, grew, you know, a couple blocks from here, right? Her thing, and this is my second call to action, her thing is very simple. I mean, people will be debating her legacy and celebrating it for years, but I think it boils down to this. Take ownership of your street. That is your space. Think of it like you think of your living room. Rearrange it, embrace it, live in it. Thanks.